Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. I am your host, Austin Render. Excited to have you all here. If you're joining us live, if you're listening to us, or if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, maybe in hindsight, if you're listening to us on the podcast feed, we appreciate however you come across our content, however you choose to consume it. We appreciate you being here. A reminder to download our episodes, give us a like, a subscribe, tell your friends as we continue to try and grow the podcast here into our first season of existence. We are a part of the Back Home Network, which is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. You can check us out on the Back Home Network YouTube channel and on Apple and Spotify podcasts. And on Twitter, you can keep up with all the latest at Dribble Drive WBB. Every Tuesday, we drop our episodes live here on the Back Home Network channel at noon Eastern Time. And we appreciate those of you who are joining us live. If you are joining us live, feel free to leave any questions you may have about that first weekend of Big Ten basketball in the comments. We'll try and get to those as we go through the show. Programming note for you, the Tuesday, December 24th, otherwise known as Christmas Eve. I know myself included with many of you will be traveling or being with the family that day. So we will not have a show on the 24th. We're going to move our live show to the 23rd. It'll be a Monday noon on the 23rd. We will release the episode that day. That way, if you're traveling on the 24th, even the 23rd or the 25th, we got some podcast content for you to listen to. And, of course, you can always join us live there. Monday at noon. Again, that's going to be the 23rd instead of the 24th. Just a programming note for you as we approach the holidays. A lot of good basketball still between now and then that we will need to discuss. All right, let's get into the news, which is the top 25 has dropped. Obviously, yesterday we got our first look at the top 25. Let's take a look at the where the Big Ten teams rank right now in the top 25. It's still UCLA atop the charts at number 1. Number 5, USC. They move up one spot. Number 7, Maryland stays put. Number 11, Ohio State moves up one spot. A nice win over Illinois, who is no longer on this ranking sheet. They are receiving votes, the second team out after they lost at Columbus. Number 17, Michigan State, big movers of the week. They're up 7 spots in the top 25, and they've got a big one this week with the Iowa Hawkeyes. We'll talk about that with the head coach of the Spartans, Robyn Fralick, later in the show. Number 20, Michigan's up a couple of spots, 3 spots up for the Wolverines after they grinded out a win over Northwestern. Iowa drops down 4 spots. They had their first loss of the season at Tennessee. Certainly stuff to talk about there. And Nebraska, that graphic's actually not right if you're watching us. They're up to number 24 in the top 25. They moved up 1 spot with a nice win over Minnesota, which we will have plenty of content about today. Laying out our show and the guests that are expected to join us here on our episode number 28 here today. We're going to talk some USC women's basketball with Eli Kleinmann, the voice of the Trojans. Matt Coatney, the voice of the Cornhuskers, will join us to talk some Nebraska basketball. And then we, as mentioned, Robyn Fralick will join us at the tail end of the show to talk about Michigan State, who's off to its best start, 9-0. so far this season. Well, we should not delay it any further. Let's get this thing started. Team of the week, that's the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and they went at home, took down Minnesota. It wasn't just a win. This was a beatdown. They were up 27-11 at the end of the first quarter. They dominated the first frame and just kind of held on the rest of the way. I had the game on. I was glued in for about a quarter, and then I started doing some other stuff and just kind of kept looking up at the scoreboard like, okay, what's it at now? And every time I looked up, it was somewhere between 13 and 17 points. Minnesota just could not get any traction in this game. I give Nebraska a ton of credit for that and the way they played in this one. They win 84-65. Nebraska still figuring out life without Natalie Potts. Minnesota still figuring out life without Mara Braun, although they had some experience last season dealing with her absence as she continues to be out with injury. And Natalie Potts is out for the season for Nebraska. The Cornhuskers handled it beautifully on Sunday in a nice win over Minnesota. And joining us now is the voice of Nebraska, Matt Coatney. And Matt, that was a really impressive win from Nebraska on Sunday. They really took it to Minnesota right off the bat. They're up 27-11 at the first quarter. What's the key when this Nebraska team's working well, like that first quarter? What is it that stands out to you about the way that Nebraska is that was playing there in that game?
It was all about ball movement, Austin. I really think that the Huskers really looked for the open player. There was a situation where Alberti Rimdahl had a layup, but there were 4 people underneath the basket who potentially could have blocked the shot. And kind of surprisingly, she kicked it out to the top of the key for a 3. And I think that was illustrative of what the Huskers did. Kendall Coley made a great save on a ball going out of bounds, found Callan Hake for a spot-up 3. So Nebraska's ball movement was really good. They got a lot of good post touches.
Well, it appears we lost Matt Coatney, so we'll try and get Matt back on there here in a moment. But as he was talking about there, Nebraska gets the win 84-65 over Minnesota. The Golden Gophers were previously unbeaten prior to that game, and we'll see if we can get Matt back on here. Do we have you, Matt? No, we do not. So hold on a minute. We're going to work on that and try and get you back with Matt here momentarily. As we try to bring on our guests here, trying to keep the show more or less of me talking and more of other people who are at these games physically on the sideline, which obviously Matt was. But okay, we got Matt back
all about
now.
Ball movement, Austin.
Matt,
I really think
hold on.
Yeah, post touches.
Here we go. Oh, did we lose him again? Okay. Well, this is live TV, folks, right here. This is. Okay, so our video is not loading. Let's we'll go back to Matt here in a moment. But in the waiting room, we do have someone else that can hopefully give us some insight into what was happening this weekend. And that's talking about our player of the week, Juju Watkins. How about her performance against Cal Baptist? 40 points, a school record, 9 3-pointers, and it was 9 of 11 for Juju Watkins. And then she scored 21 points, did battle some foul trouble in USC's opening Big Ten win over the Oregon Ducks. And joining us now is the play-by-play broadcaster of the USC women's basketball program, Eli Kleinmann. And Eli, just a fantastic performance up in Eugene by USC, very similar to Nebraska, where it was a slow, I guess not similar in the fact that it was a slow start for USC. But you guys got it going there in the second quarter. It's just a really impressive performance. What were your takeaways from the performance there from USC as they go on the road to take down Oregon?
Lindsey Gottlieb, the head coach for USC, said it best right after the game, both to me and in the press conference, is any win on the road in conference is a really good win. It doesn't matter who you're playing. It doesn't matter how good you are, how good they are. Going on the road, winning a conference game is always going to be tough. And going up to Oregon has never been an easy place to play, especially with the fan base they have. And Kelly Graves is a really good head coach. So I think that, just to start there, that is an impressive thing for USC to do. And I think what was impressive is the way they responded. I think that's something that this coaching staff has been preaching about, trying to respond and knowing that it's not going to be easy. Oregon got off to a hot start. They were up 9-3, and USC wrestled back. They were down just 1 going into the second quarter, and then they went on a massive run to start the second quarter and really take control of the game. They outscored Oregon 28-6 in the second quarter, and that was really all USC needed. And then you get to the second half, and I think what was also impressive, and another one of my takeaways, is USC's ability to stay in the games, keep control of the game while Juju Watkins was in foul trouble, because she picked up her 4th really early in the third, and USC played a bunch of minutes in that third quarter without their superstar. And the ability to hold that lead without her, and then Kiki Iriafen picked up a couple fouls as well, so she had to sit for a while, was really impressive, showing that USC has good depth pieces that really can compete in the Big Ten.
I thought that was one of the big things in the offseason for USC. I mean, Juju had to play so many minutes as a freshman, and having this now newfound depth that you all have there in LA is huge. You mentioned that second quarter. just a dominating performance, just an exceptional brand of basketball USC put on there. I believe Oregon shot 11% in the quarter and USC 61%. I mean, that's usually going to lead to a lopsided total. What was USC doing so well in that frame?
I just think when it clicks for this team, it clicks. And like that's the potential that we see from this team. But I think it's defense to offense, right? You get stops, you get on transition. I mean, this team in transition is about as hard to guard as probably any team in the country. I mean, when you have Juju Watkins, but then you have the pieces around her, right? Kiki Iriafen, Talia Von Ohoffen, who's shooting the ball better as of late. Rhea Marshall's another great player. And then you have another piece on the floor. And so it's just when they're in transition, there's so many options, but you have Juju, and Juju in transition is just one of the hardest players to stop in the country, going downhill. And she can, if you're worried about her going downhill and driving to the rim, she'll just stop behind the 3-point line and knock down a three.
Did it take you a minute as you're sitting there in Eugene, a place that USC has been many times before, in conference games many times before, did it take it a minute to be like, oh, this is a Big Ten game. This is a conference Big Ten game.
Man, it's a weird feeling. I mean, it feels like a Pac-12 game. It's an opponent you've seen for years. I mean, that was the 79th time they've played all time, but the first in the Big Ten. And so, you know, it's a weird feeling. I asked Lindsey Gottlieb about it after the game. You know, she said it's a unique feeling. She said it's a good feeling to start their first ever Big Ten game with a win and, you know, just keep going from there. And things will be a little more different once you start facing the opponents that you don't see every year. But for now, Oregon was a great place to start because USC has seen them and there was some familiarity there, and there won't be as much with other Big Ten teams.
Yeah, it'll certainly change as we head toward the end of the month and USC starts playing some of the Midwestern Big Ten teams on the schedule. But let's talk a little bit about, I mean, Saturday was great. Juju Watkins, 21 points. You mentioned she got in foul trouble. She was terrific a week ago against Cal Baptist. 40 points and a 9 3-point performance. And it's not as if she took 20. She was 9 of 11. She was terrific. And I think the thing with Juju last year, she could shoot it, but if she becomes a prolific 3-point shooter, it's unguardable what she can do with the basketball, and she's showing that. Now, granted, it's Cal Baptist, and I don't mean any offense to them, but a great performance from Juju. You got to see it. What were your thoughts on that performance?
Well, I think it's really interesting because she is a good 3-point shooter. You see it in practice. You see it in warm-ups. And it hadn't showed up as much early in the season in games. She was shooting 25% from beyond the arc coming into that game. And she had actually been shooting it better over the last couple games before that. But she is a really good 3-point shooter. And all of a sudden, after that game, her 3-point percentage is 38%, which is a really, really solid mark. But I think once it clicks and when she gets hot, it's just unstoppable. And she said it before, and I think we've seen it before. Stanford and the 51-point game there is a great example. Like, she is one of those players that when she heats up, she is in a zone, and it takes a lot to get her out of it. And she got some good looks against California Baptist, and they gave her some good looks because, you know, you do have to somewhat pick your poison with her because she can get to the rim so well, and that mid-range is so good. And her ability to knock them down that game was really impressive. Set the single game USC record for 3-pointers made with 9, and the previous record was 7. It's just when everything's falling, it's all going her way. And that just kind of felt early in the game. You could kind of feel that she had unlocked it and everything was going to be going in that day.
It is a scary proposition for the rest of the conference if Juju Watkins is going to be knocking down 38% from beyond the arc because she's already so good everywhere else on the floor. How have you seen her and Kiki Iriafen kind of work together through these first few weeks of the season? Because I think preseason we all thought that's a dynamic duo in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying there have been, but you expected maybe some growing pains as they work together for the first time. How have you seen that relationship thrive?
I think we're seeing it get better day by day. And I think this whole team has some of those growing pains in the early going. 7 freshmen, but I think what's also important is you had 2 grad transfers who were in 2 entirely different systems at Oregon State and Stanford, Kiki being one of them. And so I think it is just slowly getting better, but you're seeing that their production is going up and USC's production is going up over the last 4 games. And I think Kiki playing well is a big reason for it. USC in Palm Springs outscored St. Louis by about 30 points in the third quarter in that one. And one of the reasons why is because Kiki took over that game. And that felt like one of the first moments where she was that unstoppable force that we saw against Stanford. And the 2 of them clicked in that game. And then they both were clicking against California Baptist. And really, for the most part, until foul trouble, they were clicking against Oregon. And that is why USC built that lead, because when the 2 of them click at the same time, USC pours it on. And I think we're finally starting to see them get rhythm. I mean, this team is well connected off the court. They all love each other off the court. But, it takes time on the floor to really get connected. And so I think we're finally starting to see it click a little bit better for those 2.
Another scary piece of the puzzle for USC. Notre Dame was able to get the best of the Trojans. When you looked at that game and now you look back at it, what stands out to you as to maybe some of the reasons why USC fell short and where they can improve upon?
I think turnovers is where you start. I mean, 20-plus turnovers is just usually costly, and I know that's something that the coaching staff
All right, apologies for that. Our video playback having some issues as we try to bring in our guests here. We'll continue to work on that as we go. But certainly a great performance by USC on the road at Oregon. They held the Ducks to 11% shooting in the second quarter, and USC shot 61% itself, which was awfully impressive by them. So certainly a very good showing by USC in their Big Ten debut. Let's see if we can get Matt Coatney back in here. Matt, it
was all about ball movement, Austin.
Okay.
I really think that the Huskers really looked for the open player. There was a situation where Alberti Rimdahl had a layup, but there were 4 people underneath the basket who potentially could have blocked the shot. And kind of surprisingly, she kicked it out to the top of the key for a 3. And I think that was illustrative of what the Huskers did. Kendall Coley made a great save on a ball going out of bounds, found Callan Hake for a spot-up 3. So Nebraska's ball movement was really good. They got a lot of good post touches.
All right. We're just going to ditch our videos that we had there and just go ahead and talk about some of the other games that are going on that went on to the Big Ten this weekend. We touched on USC. We touched on Nebraska. How about this one? This was a bit surprising as Michigan takes down Northwestern, but I think it was more so in how it happened. Northwestern was right there, led by 4 going into the fourth quarter of this game, and Michigan just shot 25% from 3, 5 of 21. 36% from the floor in total. They got 18 out of Olivia Olson, but she was 1 of 6 from 3. 16 points from Jordan Hobbs. The third quarter was a bit of a disaster for Michigan. They were down by 4 after it. They scored just 8 points in the third quarter, but they found a way to win this game. They finished on an 8-1 run after Northwestern retook the lead 53-52. And again, not everything's going to be pretty in the Big Ten Conference, but in the end, Michigan found a way to will themselves across the finish line. They'll play Detroit Mercy this Saturday, but I also came away very impressed with Northwestern and their game plan. They put a lot of pressure on Michigan's freshman guards. I thought it was a very good performance by Northwestern, a team that has had an interesting start to the year. They have a really good win over Utah, a team that went on to beat Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. They beat DePaul last week on Wednesday, 64-56. And then they go to Michigan, and they're right there, again, on the wrong side of the 8-1 run. But Kyla Jones had 14 points. I think if Kaylee Walsh doesn't foul out, there could have been a little bit more there down the stretch. She fouled out with 10 points for Northwestern. But I come away pretty impressed with Northwestern. And I think the ultimate thing that you learn from this is that there is zero off days. There are 0 off days in the Big Ten, none whatsoever. So I don't think there's anybody you could take lightly in this conference and assume you've got a win handed to you. This is as deep of a conference as we've seen in women's basketball. How about the game of the week? We have not talked about it yet because it was very under the radar. Not a game that most people were looking at, but a game that was certainly worth watching down the stretch, and that was Wisconsin pulling out a 66-64 win at Rutgers. I call it the game of the week because it had the finish of the week. I think the win of the week is Ohio State, but I think the game of the week is the way this one finished. So this was a Wisconsin team that was kind of dominating this game. They were doing what they wanted. They led 53-42 to start the fourth quarter. Defense had been terrific, and Rutgers just shoots out of a cannon in the fourth quarter. They start the quarter on a 12-2 run. They grab the lead, 58-57 with 3:48 to go. They regain it and take a 3-point lead with a minute and a half to play. Wisconsin gets it back, and then Kaomi McMiller, who is our freshman of the week, with 20 points in this game against Wisconsin, she hits a game-tying layup, 64 apiece, with 26 seconds left in the game. But then on the last possession for Wisconsin, Destiny Adams eventually called for a technical foul, but a foul was called on Rutgers with 0.7 seconds left in the game. And ultimately, they then, I still am a little confused watching the game. It appeared that it was Coquise Washington that got teed up. The ESPN box scores said it was Destiny Adams. Either way, somebody got teed up, and it was Tess Myers who hit a big three to go ahead for Wisconsin the final minute, and then Natalie Leitzinger was the one who hit the free throws. Ronnie Porter hit some as well off the technical, and they ultimately go 2 of 4 from the free throw line in that stretch, and they win 66-64. It was a bit of a chaotic sequence there, but it was a great finish and a very interesting finish, back and forth between Tess Myers and Kaomi McMiller and Sarah Williams. Sarah Williams, again, with a double-double, 20 points and 13 rebounds. Carter McRae with 14 points. And as we mentioned, Tess Myers with that big three. She finishes with 11. Wisconsin gets the win. They're 8-2 now on the season. A nice win for the Badgers. Indiana was on the road at Penn State. They won 75-60. This was close for about 3 quarters. And then Indiana kind of put the foot on the gas in the fourth quarter and took this one over. Indiana was shooting, I believe, under 30% in the first quarter of this game. They trailed by a point, and then they got it going. They shot over 60% for the rest of the game, and they won the fourth quarter 26-17. Caroline Striplin is the story of this game, the Tennessee transfer. I think a lot of the eyes were on the other transfer for Indiana, Shea Chesky, going back to Penn State. She had a quiet game, but the other transfer, Caroline Striplin, was the story. 27 points, 12 of 12 from the floor. She is the first Hoosier to go perfect from the floor with at least 10 field goal attempts, not named Mackenzie Holmes. She did it twice in her career, 10 of 10 against Auburn and 13 of 13 against Eastern Kentucky. And Caroline Striplin joins that group, going 12 for 12 from the floor. She hit a three, some elbow jumpers, free throw line jumpers. It wasn't all layups for Striplin, but she certainly was the best player on the floor in this game, and she proved it with that perfect field goal percentage. Yarden Garzone had a sneaky good game as well, 22 points, 6 of 10 on a three-point line, and that was on the heels of one of Indiana's worst shooting days in their come-from-behind win over Southern Indiana on Wednesday, where Yarden Garzone went 5 of 18 from the floor and 2 of 12 from three. If you've been watching Garzone over her 3-year career now in the Big Ten, you know she's a better shooter than 2 for 12 from the floor, from the three-point line, I should say. And she proved that in Happy Valley, 6 of 10 from three, 22 points, 4 rebounds. She's becoming a playmaker as well, 5 assists in this one. I believe she had 7 assists against Southern Indiana. So good to see from her. Hoosiers, also a big point for Indiana this season, has been low assist numbers, high turnover numbers. Well, in this game, 21 assists, 12 turnovers. Penn State tried to blitz Indiana with the press, sometimes 2-2-1, sometimes 1-2-2. And Indiana at times early in the season had struggled. I mean, Harvard, a great example. The Crimson really disrupted Indiana with the press. They handled it beautifully in this game. Most of those 12 turnovers were honestly in the front court, in the half court offense for Indiana. They handled the press very well, got them a lot of good open looks, and then they moved the ball well with those 21 assists. Indiana is now 7-3 on the year, and they're not receiving any votes in the AP poll yet. I know they've had some close wins, some losses early in the year, but they're starting to play some good basketball. Sidney Parrish remains out, but getting that performance from Striplin off the bench, Garzone playing really well. This Indiana team is certainly not to be taken lightly. They will have Bellarmine this Sunday, I believe Oakland after that, and then they'll jump back into Big Ten play with Wisconsin. So Indiana certainly a team that is not going to go away despite the slow start to the season. Jayla Oden, though, deserves a shout-out for Penn State. She had 24 points in their loss to St. John's last Monday. That was a career high for her. She puts up 19 again in this one, 7 of 15 from the floor. She had not had a game in their first 8 games of the season where she took made more than 4 shots from the floor. Has done that in back-to-back games now, scoring 43 points over the last 2 games. And she left this game with an injury. She couldn't put any weight on her right leg. It was very concerning. And she was back pretty quickly, finished the game out, leading scorer for Penn State. Gracie Merkel had 16. Hoosiers made life difficult on her. The thing for Penn State, they're going to have to find something from beyond the arc. Mariah Murray, she was unable to get going. Penn State was 1 of 10 from 3, and that one was late in the game. They have to find a way to get some more three-point shooting. It's hard to win games without being able to knock consistently something from beyond the arc. They also only had 25 rebounds in this game. So Penn State's lost back-to-back. They're at Providence tomorrow and Kansas on the road on Sunday. So tough week here for Penn State. We'll see if they can bounce back and get back to that play they had in their 8-0 start to the season. Maryland, how about this? They had a bit of a scare at Purdue, 78-69, the final score for the 7th-ranked Terps. They win this one, but it was not pretty and it was not easy for the Maryland Terrapins. They went to West Lafayette. We weren't really paying a whole lot of attention to this game, but all of a sudden it's 18-6 Purdue at the end of the first quarter. It's still 38-29 Purdue at halftime. You kind of felt like, okay, Purdue weathered a little bit of the storm there in the second quarter. They still lead by 9. And then it was Maryland the rest of the way. 49-31 in the second half, including 26-14 to grab the lead in the third quarter. Saylor Poffenberger's playing great right now. Double-double for her with 17 points and 13 rebounds. Bree McDaniel came off the bench and gave them 16 points. And on a off-shooting night for Kayleen Schmeichel, only 3 field goals for 13 points, they find a way to grind out a road victory. And like we said with the Northwestern situation, there's nobody you can sleep on in the Big Ten Conference. Purdue and Northwestern, Rutgers, Wisconsin, teams that have struggled in the past are no easy outs right now in the Big Ten. Maryland and Michigan found that out this week. No games this week for Maryland, so they've got an off week as they try to figure out how to improve from that performance. But better to learn from a win as Maryland gets to 10-0 and still a top 10 team in the country. For the Purdue side of things, again, they shot 50% from the floor in all first 3 quarters and still 46% in the fourth. So they shot well the entire game. Rashonda Jones off the bench, 17 points. Reagan Bass, 16. Destiny Lombard, 15. They shot 51% from the floor, 41% from 3. That's a good ingredient to try and pull off an upset. I think there's a lot of positives that Katie Geralds can take out of this one for Purdue. And they're thrown right back into the fire on Saturday. Think about the schedule for Purdue. Through mid-December, they will have played Notre Dame, South Carolina, Maryland, and now Kentucky this Saturday. So this is a really tough stretch to start the year for Purdue. They'll get thrown back into the fire with Kentucky this Saturday. Tennessee knocks off the Iowa Hawkeyes 78-68 in the Champions Classic. This was a terrific basketball game. Really enjoyed the watch. But if you're an Iowa fan, you might have had to cover your eyes just a little bit. 30 turnovers in this game. That is not Iowa basketball that we've come to know over the past few years. Lucy Olson was back, which was great to see. 23 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, a double-double for Addison O'Grady, who's having a really good start to the year. for Iowa. It's allowing Hannah Stuelke to play a little bit more of the 4 position, which when we talked to Rob Brooks, their play-by-play guy over the summer, he said that's more of her natural position. That's their goal, is to get her back into that. 8 points, 10 rebounds for Stuelke, only made 1 basket, 1 of 8 from the floor. It was a weird game because Iowa turned it over 30 times, but they couldn't make their threes, just 3 of 14 from 3. But they out-rebounded Tennessee 48-33. Tennessee was 7 of 29 from 3. But the Lady Vols found a way late. Tate Cooper was terrific, 23 points, knocked down 10 of her 22 shots. Iowa suffers its first loss of the season, still in the top 25 at 8-1. They have an awesome week if you are into great basketball games. Iowa hosting Iowa State on Wednesday, and then they're on the road at Michigan State on Sunday. Going to be a focal point of the college basketball world to watch some Iowa basketball this week, but they dropped to 8-1. Emphatic performance from number 12, Ohio State. They take down a ranked Illinois squad 83-74. This was appointment television coming into the week. You knew this would be a good one. And it was back and forth for the first quarter and a half. They had a nice surge to get it to halftime and jumped out to an 18-point lead at the end of the third quarter. Good to see Cody McMahon back out there. Had missed 4 games. She scores 25 points. Taylor Theory, the ultimate glue player, growing into more of that, obviously, now. But 14 points, 4 rebounds. Chance Gray, 13 points. Ohio State just shot 6 of 29 from 3, but the rebounds, or actually they were out-rebounded by Illinois, 44-32. So a couple of stats that wouldn't explain the win, but the press was so good. It sped Illinois up. It got them a bunch of second-quarter turnovers, got Ohio State on a run, and ultimately the score a little bit closer than what the game truly was as Ohio State wins. They play tonight against Ball State and then Youngstown State on Sunday. So really good watch there as Ohio State gets the win. The Buckeyes are 8-0 on the season. And how about the number 1 team of the country? We haven't touched on them yet. They went to Washington and won 73-62. This was kind of a game that they just kind of held it there. UCLA gets off to a good start, and they just kind of stiff-arm Washington throughout the game. Lauren Betts, 23 points, 10 of 16 for the floor. Kiki Rice starting to look like herself, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. They shoot 54% from the floor, and they kind of cruise in this one by 11. They're 9-0 now on the season. Washington had 4 starters in double figures, but only 2 points off the bench for Washington. In a game against the number 1 team in the country, you kind of need those unsung heroes to step up. They didn't quite have that. Ella Dean, Delia Daniels, Savia Sellers, and Hannah Steins all in double figures. But again, just 2 points off the bench. They'll take on Utah this Saturday. Fascinating matchup there for a team that's had a bit of a ride so far this year in Utah. That's all the games from last week. The game of the week is number 21 Iowa taking on number 17 Michigan State in the Breslin Center Sunday at noon on the Big Ten Network. We had a chance to catch up with Robyn Fralick earlier this week and chat with her about this game. Hopefully this video is going to work for us. We'll give this one a try as we had a chance to catch up with Robyn Fralick, and she starts it off by talking about this 9-0 start, which is the best start in program history for Michigan State.
I think, what we've been able to see is being able to win in different ways. The multidimensionality, I think that's required to win consistently. So still a lot of season left to play. We know that, but we found ways to win when we haven't shot well. We found ways to win when we haven't maybe shot free throws well or guarded as well. So that's been encouraging that we found different ways to be successful.
Yeah, I want to go back to the Acrisure tournament that you were in. A couple of games where you guys fall behind, especially in the first game. You're behind double digits. What did you learn about your team as they were able to fight back and find a way not only to win the first one, but then to back it up and win the next one against Vanderbilt?
Yeah, well, we were down 16 against Cal with about 2.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And, as a staff, we still felt confident that we could get it turned around. I think, though, it's one thing to feel a certain way, right? And it's a whole nother thing to, to actually be able to do it. And so I think our team, you build a belief around that, right? You build a belief of like, hey, if we keep stacking possessions together, we can turn this thing around. So I think that was important. It's one thing to say you're resilient. It's another thing to be resilient, right? It's one thing to say, hey, we've got time if we stack possessions. And then for our team to be able to go out and execute that. And then the same thing the next night against Vanderbilt, we went down 8 in the third quarter, and I just saw our team's composure. Like they'd been in that spot before, and we knew if we did more things right, same thing, we could get the game turned around. And I think that was a really important part of that trip.
I know you never want to be down 16 points. Obviously, if you can put it together all season long, never trailing by 16 would be great. But do you feel like that's a great experience early in the season to be in that spot? And now you have proof on film to show your team, hey, this is what we are capable of. Even when we're down, you can't count us out.
Yeah, and Cal's a good team. I mean, they, it's one thing to be down 16 and you're just not playing well. It's another thing to be down 16 to a good team who shoots the 3 really well. So that the film from that was helpful, but I also think it was helpful to see why we were down 16. And those are the things we've got to be able to improve upon. Obviously, moving forward into Big Ten play.
Julia Ayrault and Grace Van Sluten, a great kind of 1-2 punch for you guys. You go and get Grace out of the transfer portal. How have you seen that relationship grow? And how have you seen Grace kind of free up Julia to play a little bit of a different game this season?
Yeah, we call them double trouble. So, and big credit to Julia. I think from day one when Grace got here, she has really embraced her. They have a great friendship, a great relationship, and they make each other better. I think it's, we've been able to move Julia. She still plays inside, but she can play more all over the court. It's also switched up her defensive matchup, which I think has been a good thing as well. And, as many things as they're doing well, one thing Grace too has really helped our team with is just rim protection and defensive rebounding. So I love they're great friends. They really support each other. They celebrate each other. And most importantly, they make each other better.
And I know Julia is kind of a great example of somebody who kind of bided her time, kind of worked her way through the Michigan State system, and now is blossoming. And just kind of talk about what she's meant to this program just as a whole and what she's accomplished.
One of my favorite things to share about Julia is she is a true Spartan through and through and through. She loves Michigan State. She loves the school. She loves the community, and she absolutely loves the program. So, nowadays with how much the athletic landscape is changing, I think she's a name you should Google because her story is worth paying attention to. It's been full of challenge. It's been full of setback, frustration, delayed success. And she just kept working. She just kept getting better, which is really how most things in life work, right? Most things aren't immediate. Most things don't happen, just in a snap. So her story is one of really good perseverance and sticking with a place you love. And she kept working and she kept getting better. And that is, she had a breakthrough. So we're really thankful as a new staff that we got to be part of that.
Year 2 for you here in East Lansing with Michigan State. How have you seen the fan support kind of build at the Breslin Center over your first year and a half?
Yeah, they keep showing up. And, I always tell our team, if you want good fans, you got to be worth watching, right? If you want a fan base, when you go out on the court, you've got to be worth their time and their money and their resources. And so we've put it on ourselves. Like hey, let's get good. Let's play together. Let's play in a way that is compelling. And as we've done that, our fan base has kept growing. I mean, last night, our home game, we had a great crowd. The energy of the Breslin was amazing. I was at the men's game on Saturday, same thing. So we feel fortunate to be at a place where basketball is really valued.
Absolutely. I know some coaches will say sometimes you want a loss because sometimes it shows some things to your team and helps you get better. Obviously, no losses yet on the season for you guys, but what have you been able to kind of do to continue to motivate this team and maybe some of the things you're still trying to get them to improve upon?
Oh, there's plenty from every game to motivate. There's plenty of things that have to improve. And one thing we do a lot is show them too. All right, these are, from a data perspective, this is where we are. Hey, in the Big Ten, this is where you have to be really good, right? Okay, I know we won this game, but looking, forward, this has to be better. This has to be at this number for us to continue to be successful. So we're always thinking forward, and we're always making sure our team understands why.
Absolutely. And as you guys kind of get ready for one of the bigger games on the schedule this week, which is you guys hosting the Iowa Hawkeyes, the defending Big Ten tournament champions. Obviously, this is a very different looking Iowa team, but it's still, I feel like I turned it on and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Iowa. They still run kind of some of the same stuff. When you look at Jan Jansen's system, when you look at this year's Iowa team, what do you feel like you're prepping for with this Hawkeye squad?
Well, it's still a really, really good team. I mean, they have a great program, a lot of good players, and Coach Jensen's doing a really good job with them. So really good post play. I mean, that's been a staple for a long time. I think something that stands out about this particular team is they're defending really well and they're rebounding the ball really well. And they have multi-dimensional scoring attack with guard play and, really efficient interior play. So we'll have a lot to get ready for. They're a really good team. They'll present a great challenge, and we'll need this week to get ready.
It's going to be a great game for us neutral observers who are excited to watch some good basketball there in the Breslin Center. We'll wrap on this, Coach. What do you feel like have been the strengths so far for your squad through the first 9 games of the season?
We play a really unique style, I think, being aggressive, really aggressive on both sides of the floor. We've been able to win the possession game with turnover margin, and we've gotten to the free throw line a lot. I think those two things for us have been really, really good across our whole team, that we've been able to do that together.
Coach, we are very appreciative of you joining us here. Congratulations on a great start, but I know the work is far from done. So plenty of season to go. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks so much. Go Green.
We appreciate Robyn Fralick for joining us this week on the show. Great insight into this best start in program history for Michigan State. They are 9-0, and they have the game to circle on the calendar this week with number 21 Iowa coming to town. Obviously, Iowa's been the team, the hunted team, past couple of years. They obviously have a much different roster this time around. The interesting thing will be that Tennessee was able to force a ton of Iowa turnovers, obviously 30 in that Champions Classic game. Michigan State is a high-pressure defense. They want to get up and down the floor. They want to press you. Can they force turnovers from the Hawkeyes? That's something that when we talked with them, their assistant coach last week on the show, Raina Harmon, she said they have to be better about taking care of the basketball. They were not in the Champions Classic. They're going to have to with the Breslin Center if they want to get out of there with a win. Well, we mentioned some great performances this week. Let's throw some honorable mentions out there. Genesis Bryant had 22 points in the loss at Ohio State, knocking down 4 threes. We mentioned Caroline Striplin, certainly honorable mention for Player of the Week. Cody McMahon with those 25 points against the Illini. Lauren Betts with 23 against Washington. Kiki Iriafen overshadowed a little bit by her teammate. Iriafen had 2 double-doubles this week, averaging 17.5 points and 11 rebounds a game. Kaomi McMiller and Olivia Olson and Silas Swords kind of trading back and forth on Freshman of the Week. This week it's Kaomi McMiller. Olivia Olson had 18, the win over Northwestern. Shout out to Tori McKinney from Minnesota, 2 games in double figures this week for the Golden Gophers. Outside of Iowa, Michigan State, there are a couple other games to watch. It's a bit of a lighter week. Number 20, Iowa State is at number 17, Iowa tomorrow night. We mentioned Kentucky at Purdue Saturday. Utah is at Washington on Saturday, and Penn State at Kansas on Sunday. So there are still plenty of good games to be watched. All right, we're going to try one more time here with our interview with Matt Coatney. I think it's certainly worth listening to, especially for the Nebraska fans out there, as he kind of gives you a State of the Union on Nebraska. He's going to start, as we've heard a couple of times, but we'll try and skip ahead to where the video is frozen each time here. And hopefully
it was all about ball movement. I don't think you're going to see.
Yeah, it was. I just thought a really thorough performance. And Nebraska is one of the best in the country in field goal percentage and three-point percentage. Put that on display on Sunday for sure. The lineup has obviously had to shift around a little bit with the injury to Natalie Potts. I thought Kendall Coley was really good, gave you guys some great minutes. How have you kind of seen Amy Williams try to work with this lineup as they deal now with the season-ending loss of Natalie Potts?
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress, Austin. I think Amy Williams would tell you that also. I don't think you're going to see the same lineup consistently throughout the rest of the season. You don't replace Natalie Potts. She was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. She can guard 1 through 5. She's got length. So I think what you're going to see is matchups. I think you're going to see a lot of Petra Bojan against teams like UCLA, who've got a dominating post like a Lauren Betts. I think you might see more Kendall Coley against teams that maybe are more guard oriented. And but Coley played very well. She's a fifth-year senior. But I don't think Nebraska's found its sea legs in replacing Potts just yet. I think sometimes they're going to play 4 out, 1 in with Markowski. But the Huskers have a lot of post depth. That's the one thing they can probably absorb the injury to Potts more than some teams could because they do have post depth. But they certainly have not found the final answer to what this team is going to look like in a starting lineup the rest of the year, I don't think.
Well, I think one of the players that now has maybe a bigger responsibility than they originally thought would be Britt Prince. And she looked great earlier in the week against Lindenwood. She's looked really good at times this season. What have you thought about her early season development?
Yeah, Britt came in as one of the most highly ranked recruits Nebraska's ever had. A 5-star, was on everybody's radar, and she's running the offense. With the loss of Jazz Shelley, I've been trying to tell fans, do not compare these people. They're different players. Britt likes to get into the lane, and she is really good at distributing the ball to Alexis Markowski in places where Lex can be effective. And I think she continues to learn how to play pick and roll game with Alexis Markowski. Prince also likes getting to the rim. She's really a 5-tool offensive player. Her defense is coming along pretty good. She leads the team in steals or is near the top in steals right now. Her defense is a little farther along than I thought it would be, but you're going to see her on the floor for probably as many minutes as any Husker, and we're happy to have her. She isn't playing like a freshman. There's no doubt about it.
She had some step-back moves at the elbows early in that game. It just was really impressive. You can see it on full display. I would imagine the atmosphere at Pinnacle Bank was rocking yesterday. It certainly looked like it on the television.
It was. It's so strange to think we're already in Big Ten play. Everybody's kind of dipping their toe in the water here to get Big Ten play going. And, the fans very familiar with Minnesota. Obviously, Annika Stewart transferred there, was a 4-year player here, and still has a lot of fans here. So, yeah, great atmosphere, national TV. It's just really strange. You go 1-0 in the league, and then you got to wait a couple more weeks to get back to it.
I want to know how many of us broadcasters use the phrase dip our toes into conference play. I think we all might have used it over the weekend. But, I mean, you look at the Big Ten. What are your thoughts, Matt? You've been around the conference for a while. We obviously got most teams, I believe Iowa, Michigan State, the only ones that did not play conference this weekend. But most of the teams did. Did you get to watch any of the action? What were your thoughts from opening weekend?
Yeah, I really thought Ohio State was everything that they are as advertised. I actually was a little surprised how well Northwestern played against Michigan. I thought that Michigan might have controlled that a little bit. I think that USC looked really good in a win over a very good Oregon team. Look, this league is I can't even begin to try and explain to fans just how good this league really is. I mean, Minnesota was 10-0 and not ranked coming in. Maryland looked really, really good. You can't sleep on Wisconsin. They got a really good win over Rutgers yesterday. So tell me, Austin, where the night off is in this league. There are none. There are 0 layups in this league. You got to bring it every night, and I think the first few games have certainly underscored that.
Everything we've heard from SEC football fans over the last couple of weeks, it's true for Big Ten women's basketball, man. Half the league is ranked right now, which obviously we got a new poll this week. But, I mean, it's been terrific what we've seen from this conference thus far. Obviously, Nebraska had one slip up at Creighton earlier this season. What did you feel like went wrong, and how does Nebraska kind of look to fix some of those issues?
Well, I think the easiest thing to say is that was her first game without Natalie Potts. And Jim Flannery is a good friend of mine. That's Creighton's Super Bowl. Here they kind of feel like their little brother or little sister in the state. They took 8 days off before they played Nebraska. Nebraska played 3 games in that time. I think that, there's a lot of things there. But the biggest thing there is I would have liked to have seen that game with Natalie Potts. Creighton hit a lot of threes in the fourth quarter of play. I always throw that Creighton game out. You have to remember Connie Ori was the coach here for 15 years, and she's in the Creighton Hall of Fame. It's just a different kind of game, but that's the easy answer right there. Taking nothing away from Creighton. They are a very, very quality team, but the Huskers, that they were trying to find their way without Natalie Potts, and I would have liked to have seen that game with Potts played on the floor.
I always say that non-conference games are the hardest when they're against teams in your state. And then you get everybody's best shot. I mean, we've seen that. Obviously, Indiana's played a couple with Butler and Southern Indiana that I've been at. But you guys had that with Creighton, with Omaha early in the season. I mean, you're always going to get everybody's best shot when you play somebody in your state. And Creighton obviously did that. Well, Matt, we appreciate you jumping on. Nebraska's looked great here. I know they've lost Natalie Potts, but really seemed to put it all together in the win over Minnesota. Congratulations on that win. We appreciate you joining us.
Hey, always love talking to you, Austin. Thanks.
Thanks to Matt Coatney. So glad we were able to get that video through there because a lot of good stuff on that Nebraska team as they start to get better and better as they learn to play without Natalie Potts, which obviously we hate injuries and hate to see that one, but good to see Nebraska rallying around the folks they still have, and they are playing some good basketball right now. Well, excited to wrap up episode number 28. A reminder, every Tuesday right here on the Back Home Network YouTube channels where you can watch us live. You can join us in post on that YouTube channel. You can watch it if you aren't able to catch us live one week. We're also available in podcast form on Apple and Spotify podcasts. And keep up to date with everything with the podcast on our Twitter page at 10 bets from the books. We'll go some non-conference. We'll come back, but it's been great. Austin Render saying so long. Dribble Drive. We'll talk to you guys next Tuesday.